Good news, good news. Always good news, good news today.
No matter what else is happening in the world,
Always good news, good news.
there is always good news today.
Welcome to Good News Today, the program where you will always find good news, no matter what else is happening in the world. I'm Mark Teske, your host for Good News Today. I want to thank you for joining us. And we've got a great program. We're going to begin with our devotional time, which consists of our scripture reading, beautiful singing, and a brief study of our scripture. Today we'll be looking at John 18, 3 through 8, a passage where Jesus makes a great admission as he's about to be arrested. Get out your Bibles, turn to John 18. I'll meet you there in just a moment. Following our devotional time, Troy Spradlin will repair our understanding about the great Equalizer. Jim Dearman will join us with some sound words about you only raise kids once. Then Kee Ford sits down with Barry Gilreath as they discuss the various words that the Bible uses for love. In our final segment, we have a Bible question for Guyton Montgomery and Troy Spradlin. Is it true that when we die, we will go to heaven and then we'll get new bodies and come back to earth after judgment? Well, I hope you have your Bibles opened up to John 18, where we read, beginning at verse 3. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, "Whom are you seeking?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." And Judas, who betrayed him, also stood with them. Now when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Then he asked them again, "Whom are you seeking?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I have told you that I am he. Therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way." Today we're finishing up our study of the definitive I am statements Jesus made about himself in the book of John. And we're in the Garden of Gethsemane on the night that Jesus is being betrayed and arrested. And this group of soldiers comes by night. Judas is with them and not with the disciples. And this group is bringing lamps and torches and weapons. And they're going up onto, toward the garden. So they're visible as they approach. But Jesus stays there with his disciples. They didn't leave, but they stayed there on purpose. You see, Jesus knew, the text tells us, exactly where he was going, exactly where this was going to lead, to the cross. But when he prayed, "Father, thy will be done." He didn't want to do it, but he wanted to do the will of his Father more. So Jesus steps up and asks them, "Who is it you're seeking?" His response to them, "I am." That phrase that we've seen so many times Jesus used so effectively. Jesus, at this point, he confesses his identity. Yes, I am Jesus of Nazareth, but also his deity, using that phrase, I'm the one you're looking for, and I am the Son of God. We can tell they got the impact of that because they fell to the ground. That statement that he made had an impact on them. But I find it awful ironic, even though they had this, and Scripture is going to tell us that Jesus is going to perform a miracle by reattaching the high priest servant's ear, they still arrested him anyways. They had all the proof that they needed, but that yet they chose to do wrong and continue in it. But we see the effect on people when they realize that Jesus is the Son of God, in the presence of God. Exodus chapter 19 tells us that the Israelites, when God was there on Mount Sinai, they trembled. Isaiah chapter 6, the first 8 verses, when Isaiah is there by a vision in the throne room of God, he says, "Woe is me." John, the apostle, who was right there with Jesus in the garden, Revelation chapter 1, verse 17, when he sees Jesus, he falls flat on his face. James 2:19 tells us the devils believe, they tremble. Philippians 2:10 tells us that every knee is going to bow before Jesus. Even with all this evidence, some still do what they want to do. When confronted with that fact and the effect it had on them, they still continued to do what they wanted. People have done it, and they're doing it today. Realize it didn't take but just a few generations from creation for the world to be so filled with wickedness that God had to destroy it in the flood, Genesis 6 through 8. Jesus had tons of evidence. He walked with Jesus, yet he led the crowd that was coming to arrest him. Realize, if you walk away from God, if you walk away from Jesus, Hebrews 6 tells us you crucify him again. The evidence is there. Listen to it, obey it. And realize Jesus' prayer that God's will be done, even when it leads us where we don't want to go. What are you doing with the evidence God's given you? Will it lead you to obedience, or will you choose to walk away? He's done so much for you because he wants you to make the right decision. And that's good news for us today. Now it's time to head to the workshop where Troy Spradlin will be repairing our understanding about the great equalizer.
You know, since the dawn of time, humans have had a terrible tendency to want to divide themselves into smaller groups. I mean, we're constantly separating ourselves from each other by face and place and race and space and any other category that we can conceive. We're prone to do this from small cliques to entire nations of people. And as a result, all those various divisions have caused much hatred and violence and wars for thousands of years. And many lives have been lost or destroyed because of it. You know, we definitely need to repair our understanding about this, because if you stop and really think about it, we're all equal in the eyes of God. From both a physical and spiritual point of view, I can think of 4 areas where every human being on the face of the earth has a commonality with each other. When you take away our ethnicity or eliminate our social status, remove the color of our skin, and even get rid of our gender, we'll see that it doesn't matter if you're young or old, if you're rich or poor, slave or free, male or female, or any category that you want to choose. We're all equal when it comes to these 4 things: blood, soul, death, and judgment. You see, blood is a great equalizer because no human being can function without blood. Every living creature has the same physical element pulsing through their veins, and that's red blood. And in fact, without blood, there's no life at all, according to Leviticus 17, verse 11. The need for that life-giving blood makes all humans stand on equal ground. And this is why Jesus sacrificed His blood on that cruel cross because all humans need His life-saving blood. We need that blood if we want to have eternal life, just as we need blood for physical life. Secondly, every individual has a soul. Having a soul is another great equalizer. You know, one's soul knows nothing about political affiliations or nationalities or tribes or generations or sexuality. The soul has been given to us by God the Father, and it belongs to Him, according to Ezekiel 18, verse 4. And it's that part of our being that will live on eternally. Again, this is why Jesus sacrificed Himself, so that all the souls of mankind could be redeemed back to God and receive the reward of eternal life with Him in heaven. That's in John 3:16, Hebrews 6, verses 19 through 20. Thirdly, every living being is subject to death. Death is truly a great equalizer. No one human individual is immune to death, according to Hebrews 9, verse 27. And despite one's wealth or age or race or social status, their personal beliefs, or any other demarcation, death comes for all human beings equally, until Jesus returns, that is. Once again, this is where Jesus comes into the picture. Paul says that He has abolished death and brought life and immortality to light through the gospel, according to 2 Timothy 1, verse 10. And then lastly, number 4, every human being will still stand before the throne of God on Judgment Day. Judgment Day is a great equalizer. Revelation 20, verse 12 says, "And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the books were open. And another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books." In other words, and once again, all those divisions, all those separations, all those categories or factions has no bearing whatsoever on who will or will not stand before the judgment. Nope. Instead, every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess to God. Therefore, the bottom line is this: everyone is exactly the same in the eyes of God. No one's better or higher or greater or more important or anything else. Jesus Christ eliminated all of that division with His death, His burial, and His resurrection, making us all one in Him.
Blood, soul, death, and judgment are 4 things that make us all equal. Even though we're all equal, some people prepare their soul for judgment while others don't. To help you prepare, we offer a free Bible course to help you understand what God says about your soul and judgment. We're about to give you several ways you can contact us so that we can send you out that first course. Don't go away. Jim Dearman's going to be with us in just a moment.
You may have questions or comments about Good News Today. We'd like to hear from you. Or if you would like to receive free Bible study materials, please contact us. Our mailing address is Good News Today, P.O. Box 206, Dunlap, Tennessee 37327. Again, that's Good News Today, P.O. Box 206, Dunlap, Tennessee 37327. You may prefer to email us at goodnewstodaytv@gmail.com. That's goodnewstodaytv@gmail.com. Or call us toll-free at 1-877-384-7221. That's 1-877-384-7221. We'd like to hear from you. Hearing from our audience is always good news to us.
The easiest way to enroll in our Bible course is on our website at gnttv.org. Just click where it says Bible Course, fill out the information, and we'll get it right out to you. Did you know that Good News Today can be heard at any time through our channel on truth.fm? www.truth.fm is a group of radio stations that offer great material for everyone. If you haven't done so already, check it out and look for the Good News Today channel. Now here's Jim Dearman with some sound words for us about you only raise kids once.
We will live eternally if we obey sound words.
It is said of Boswell, the famous biographer of Samuel Johnson,
that he often referred to a special day in his childhood when his father took him fishing. The day was fixed in his adult mind, and he often reflected upon many of the things his father had taught him in the course of their fishing experience together. After having heard of that particular excursion so often, it occurred to someone much later to check the journal that Boswell's father kept to determine what he had said about the fishing trip from the parental perspective. Turning to that date, the reader found only one sentence entered: "Gone fishing today with my son. A day wasted." It's interesting to talk to parents after their children are grown and see how many of them would give anything to have that time back. They think of how differently they would do things if they could do it all over again. Deuteronomy 6 says about the words of the Lord, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up." That's Deuteronomy 6, verse 7. Days spent doing this are not wasted days.
We will live eternally if we obey sound words.
Raising children is both a privilege and a great responsibility. Thanks, Jim. Have you ever missed an episode of Good News Today and wish you could watch it? There's a few ways you can watch us on demand: on our app, on your phone, or on our website, through our YouTube channel, or on your television through Apple or Roku TV. The program is published every Sunday morning, so you never have to miss an episode. Now, Kee Ford sits down with Barry Gilreath, and they're talking about the different ways that we should love through the different words in the Bible.
Kee, it's good to have you back with us on this segment of Good News Today that we call Fabric of Family. Mm-hmm. And family is so important. It's important in who we are as individuals and where even we'll spend eternity one day. Our families have influence upon us. So I know that you have a background in counseling, and you sit with clients from time to time and couples, and they have struggles, and so I know you deal with these kinds of matters in your everyday life.
Yes, sir.
And you know, one of the things that I wanted us to just explore a little bit is this term love, because in the English language we have one word: love. And we apply that word to everything, don't we?
Yes.
We talk about how I love pizza, I love my dog, I love my wife. But at the same time, you don't have the same amount of love for your food, your pizza, as you would for your wife or your dog as for your wife, or at least you shouldn't.
Yeah, you're right.
That's right. And so, but in the Greek language, which the New Testament is, primarily consists of, the Greek language, there are very specific words that are used sometimes. Where it's translated love, it might be a word like agape, that's a Greek word, or phileo, that's a Greek word. And I was just kind of curious of what your thoughts were as you think about those two terms, agape and phileo, as it relates to the husband-wife relationship. Does God specify how a husband is to love his wife, how a wife is to love her husband? Is there a difference based upon the word that's used in the original language that maybe describes the role or the responsibility of the husband and wife?
You know, when you think about agape love in Ephesians 5, Paul lays it out as he speaks. Getting to a point of laying your life down. You know, like you said, I love my wife enough to do that. I will lay my life down regardless, whatever the situation is, if I can save her. When it comes to phileo, a brotherly love, that's more of a friendship. You know, it is true that we have to, as husbands, we get to the point of laying our lives down. And when we think about the phileo or the friendship, women are more, I would say women are wired a little bit different than men, and will have that more want the compatibility side. Not saying that men, I'm not going to throw us men under the bus and say we don't want that friendship, but it will be more important for a woman. So when we think about it from that aspect, the love is going to be there. I want to love her. I want to be her friend also. I want to be there to have that bond. And when we think about love, it is a deep thing. It's not just something that comes and goes. And it's not just a spur of the moment feeling. It's something that is cultivated.
Well, you know, in Ephesians 5 and verse 25, Paul says that husbands are to love their wives even as Christ loved the church. The term agape is used there. That's a self-sacrificial love.
Mm-hmm.
But women are never told to agape their husbands.
Mm-hmm.
But over in Titus chapter 2 and verse 5, you know, the text which he referenced talks about how that women are to love their husbands. Actually, it's verse 4 of Titus chapter 2. They're to love their husbands, and the Greek word used for love there is the word phileo.
You know, you think about this in that teaching, they're commanded to teach women to do these things. How important is it for us to know our roles?
Mm.
I believe Paul lays it out as he wrote to Titus and as he wrote to Timothy and as he wrote to the church at Ephesus, how this thing is, how it's supposed to be when it comes to a marriage. Teaching, and going back to Titus 2 and 4, teaching women to love their husbands. We need more of that today.
Mm.
Because a lot of the times people kind of fly into this thing called marriage blindly. But if we follow this pattern, if we had the older sisters teaching the younger and the younger sisters listening, and we keep that same pattern going, guess what? We'll have a healthy family, and therefore, in turn, we'll have a healthy church.
Excellent thoughts. I appreciate so much you sharing some insight with us today regarding agape and phileo, the term that is translated in our English Bible as love.
Revive us again.
There's so many different ways we should love each other, and it helps us to understand the words of the Bible so that we love in the right ways. We got a great way for you to start every day, and that's with the Good News Today Daily Devotional Time podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcast. Many listen by saying, "Alexa, play the latest episode of the podcast Good News Today Daily Devotional Time." In just a moment, we give our Bible question to Guyton and Troy.
Yes, he has said, truly has said, how we should live now. What to partake, what to avoid, what here. Do unto those that are about a kindly service. Tell him of Christ, teach him that he always is near. Did you repent, fully repent of your past sins, friend? When you confessed his name on high, did you believe, fully believe on his great name then? Or was the doubt, treacherous doubt, lingering nigh? Did you obey all of the way what he commanded? Things in his word we're told to do. Did you confess, fully confess Jesus the Savior? Did you repent? Did you believe all the way through?
Is it true that when we die, we'll go to heaven and then we'll get new bodies and come back to earth after judgment?
Hey, Troy.
Yes.
All right. Are you ready to die?
Yes, I am actually. As being a Christian, I should be that way, and I feel like that I am.
All right. Do you know how you're going to die?
I don't know how I'm going to die, and I'm not in a hurry to get there either. So.
Okay. So follow up on that then. Do you know what everything is going to be like when you die?
No, that's impossible to know, other than what the Bible tells us.
All right. You know, I say all that because today's question has to do with death. And
Okay.
it's something that scares a lot of people. And I think a lot of people worry about some stuff that in reality, they just don't need to necessarily worry about because it's going to take care of itself.
That's right.
Because I always get asked stuff about like, you know, what are we going to look like and exactly what are we going to be doing in heaven? And scripture gives us some glimpses into it, but doesn't answer all those.
Right.
And so me worrying about it doesn't change it. All I can do is say, you know what? I'm going to live every day ready to die, knowing that I am in a saved condition, ready to meet my Savior. And I know it's going to be better than this world.
Which is the most important thing. It's the absolute most important thing.
So today's question is really two questions in one. We're going
Okay.
to try and answer it quickly. Is it true that when we die, we will go to heaven and then we'll get new bodies and come back to earth after judgment?
So getting new bodies
and then coming back to earth. Two totally different, well, not totally different, but two different questions.
So I'm going to try and tackle the whole new bodies thing.
Okay.
1 Corinthians 15 tells us that Jesus Christ is the first fruit.
That's right.
And that we are going to be like him in the resurrection. And I would encourage you to just, somebody read the whole chapter to see that. And so we can look to Jesus, and how did he appear after the resurrection? Well, he didn't necessarily have this new body, because in John chapter 20, while he did have a physical body, that was a little different because that whole closed door, and then he appeared in there.
Exactly.
But he was able to dine with them.
Mm-hmm.
He still had the nails, the scars from the nails in his hands.
That's right.
And so, are we going to have the arthritic pain that we've experienced here on earth?
I hope not.
Well, according to Revelation, there's no pain, no darkness, so
That's
that
right.
won't be there. But we will have some form of the body we have today, resurrected to be able to go into eternity with.
Exactly. So we will have a heavenly body.
Yes.
Now, will we come back to earth? According to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17, it says, then we who are alive and remain, this is Paul talking about the Lord returning, says, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. You need to also consider what Peter writes, and the fact that Jesus will return as a thief in the night, and that all of these things will be burned up. But I think there's another verse that we could use, and that's in John chapter 14, whenever Jesus was telling the disciples that he is going away.
Oh, yes.
And he says that in my Father's house are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, and that you may be there where I am also. Well, he says he's going to receive us, and it's going to be there. So like you were saying, we don't have all the answers, but I don't think that we're going to be coming back to this earth, or if we do, it's going to be something that we're not going to recognize, or something totally different. It's something that's
We're going to heaven,
yes,
to be with God.
That is right.
So just to answer the question, is it true? No. We will have a resurrected body, and we are going to be in heaven with God.
Amen.
And the answer to that question is no. Once again, the team has put together some great teaching for us in this program. We encourage you to always check all religious teaching against the Word of God to see if it's true. Will you believe God or believe somebody else? If you'd like to watch or listen to the program again, so you have time to check it in the Scriptures, you can do it on our website, through our apps, or through our podcast. If you have a question, contact us. We'd love to hear from you. Remember that we love you, we're praying for you, and we want you to make it to heaven.
Always good news, good news, good news. There is good news today. There is good news around the world. Always good news, good news, good news. There is good news today. All around the world. Good news around the world. Always good news, good news, good news. There is good news today.